some point in your career, you were in Florida Championship Wrestling, correct?
1 year into the business, I was at Florida Championship Wrestling. Yes,
Did you have a relationship with? I think Eddie Graham was still running the organization at that point.
I loved Eddie Graham. His son Mike had come to San Antonio where I was working for Joe Blanchard, doing a guest spot, and he and I met up. Immediately had some kind of crazy bond, like we were like brothers disconnected with a different mother or something. It was just weird. And he liked me so much that he went home, told his dad, "Hey, got this big, good-looking kid down in Texas that needs to come to Florida and learn the ropes." And he did. He took me on the road with he and his dad. I flew in Eddie's private plane with him. Eddie would stand in the back with me every night, watch the matches with me, talk to me through the whole thing, explain to me what was good, what wasn't good, about psychology, why you did this, why you did that. And it was an education that you couldn't pay for $100,000, much less, anything else. And it was what fast tracked my ability to absorb, the nuances that you need to have to be successful in the business.
Yeah, and Eddie was quite a creator and quite a mind, and of course he passed away Super Bowl night, I understand, in 1985, and certainly Mike followed thereafter, and just it seemed like a rash of tragedies in that family, and something that's become kind of epidemic in the United States. How did those deaths affect you, Magnum?
The the fact of the matter is, there's mental health challenges, as you said, stated across America, and we live in a very high profile, business type, situation. So our struggles and things that go on in the wrestling industry, the world sees it as played out. I mean, I was watching the Super Bowl with Dick Slater when I heard about Eddie, and just couldn't believe it. And years later, Mike and I were working for WCW together, and I was Dusty's assistant, and Mike was an agent, and countless nights, I listened to Mike just basically just crying about the loss of his dad, his best friend, and what it had done to him personally, and that loss. So for Mike to have ended up going down that same path, and his son
Yeah.
did as well, it just it tells you that there's a chip, there's something. The Von Erichs,
Yeah.
same thing, and our world is so high profile, and so much importance put on perceptions and how the world perceives you and your persona, that when things go awry in that world and suddenly things are out of control, and you can no longer be that which you've always measured yourself by, things can fall apart real quickly. And I believe Eddie had something happen that was, potentially going to put him in a very compromised situation that he just couldn't wrap his head around, couldn't cope with. Mike had been hugely successful at different points of time in his life. Remember when he was 30 years old, and him and I were, running around together, and big boats and Rolexes and this and that and the other, and all the things and the accolades that came from being a Graham, to that empire crumbling, and humbling yourself to work, still go out and work hard, but realizing you could never be back where you once were, and all those unmet expectations of life are just so overwhelming for someone's coping skills, that there's some challenge there. And it greatly affected me, and I'm thankful that somehow God's given me the ability to navigate those things, because I certainly had something happen to me that could have taken me one way or another.
Sure.
And and I'm thankful that for me it was a challenge rather than a death sentence.
Yeah.
So it's terribly impactful, and it's sad for the families. It's sad for his little girl Nicole, that I still follow on Facebook and interact with, and see what's going on in her life. And I remember how special she was to her grandpa too. I remember being over at Mike's house when he lived on the Fingers there in Tampa, and her doing chin-ups in the doorway, and her dad and grandpa, cheering her on to do things, and just how much life was in that family, and suddenly to be, in such disarray, and talking to, Carrie Von Erich's daughter, hear similar stories of the happy times and all the good things that they got to interact with as a family, but the thing they're remembered for is this tragedy. And it's a shame because it's not what defines what they were all about. It was horrendous. It's the worst way anybody can think about things ending up. But it wasn't
can I
who
ask
they
you?
were.
Can I interrupt you on that though?
Yeah.
Do you feel maybe suicide is a selfish performance, though? I understand there's mental health issues, but the people that are involved, like the children you're speaking about, isn't there a form of selfishness behind that?
I can't judge it because if you're not sitting in the shoes so overwhelmed that you feel like you can't even breathe or you don't know how you're going to exist for another moment, I can't judge what goes through a man's head. It's easy to say, just totally on paper, absolutely it looks selfish. But for that person, at that moment, all they could see potentially was something they were going to bring on that was going to be far worse than them being left and out of these people's lives. And I don't think the intent at that point is just to escape, to get out of pain. I think in most of those folks' cases, they really thought they were doing someone a favor.
I'll come at a different angle then. He's a friend of yours, close friend of yours. I mean, we had Barry Windham in here, and I asked him the same question. Were you angry at him? Were you angry at Mike? Were you angry at Eddie for doing that?
I don't know if anger is the right word or not. Had it been right there and feel like they misled me and I could have helped and could have helped try to navigate that troubled time, I might have been angry. For me, it was just sadness, and I can see Barry and I have talked about it, and I know the conversations he and Mike had, and Mike had foretold of things that had made Barry feel like that he had the propensity to do that, and Barry was very much of a mindset that he was not going to be an enabler in that way, in any way, shape, or form, and support that as being an option. So for Barry, I could see where there would be an anger because he was on that level of the confrontation, and it would be hard as a man not to take that personally, like almost, how dare you, do this, with all we've been through, and because of our brotherhood and all that, and but for me, it's the sadness because I look at just the heartache and the grief and the loss. My family's everything to me, and I'd fight, through anything imaginable to protect them, and not being there to protect them is the worst thing that you could ever do.
We're going to change gears a little bit. We have a lot of, again, we were talking to you earlier, we were WWE guys. Can't speak for you, Phil, completely, but
Right.
I was. And the age of cable is where we get to